The moment you stop running toward happiness is the moment happiness finally has a chance to find you. But here is the cruel irony that nobody told you. The very act of chasing it is what pushes it further away. You have been deceived, not by others, but by a culture that sold you a lie wrapped in the promise of fulfillment. And today, we tear that lie apart. Welcome to Stoic Valor, where we strip away the noise of modern life and reveal the timeless truths that set the soul free from its self-imposed prisons. Let me ask you something uncomfortable. How long have you been chasing happiness? Think about it honestly. How many years have you spent believing that happiness exists somewhere out there, waiting for you to achieve the right goal, earn the right salary, find the right relationship, or buy the right thing? You have been running this race for so long that you probably cannot remember when it started. Maybe it began in childhood when someone told you that good grades would make you happy. Then it became the promise of a degree, then a career, then a house, then a partner, then children, then retirement. And somewhere along this endless conveyor belt of conditions, you started to notice something disturbing. Happiness never arrived. Or worse, it arrived briefly and then evaporated, leaving you more empty than before. Already scanning the horizon for the next thing that might finally fill the void. This is not your fault. You were taught this. The entire architecture of modern society is built around the assumption that happiness is a destination, something you reach after sufficient effort, sacrifice, and accumulation. Every advertisement whispers this lie. Every social media post reinforces it. Every conversation about success assumes it. But the Stoics, those ancient philosophers who understood human nature with terrifying clarity, saw through this illusion over 2,000 years ago. They discovered something that modern psychology is only now beginning to confirm. Happiness cannot be pursued directly. It must ensue. It must arise as a byproduct of something else entirely. And until you understand what that something else is, you will remain trapped on the hedonic treadmill, running faster and faster, going absolutely nowhere. Seneca, the great Roman Stoic who advised emperors and faced death with equanimity, wrote words that still cut through the centuries with surgical precision. He said that true happiness is to enjoy the present without anxious dependence upon the future. Read that again slowly. To enjoy the present without anxious dependence upon the future. This is the exact opposite of chasing. Chasing, by definition, means your attention is fixed on something ahead of you, something you do not yet have. It means the present moment is merely a stepping stone, an obstacle to be overcome on the way to somewhere better. But here's the devastating truth. The future never arrives. When tomorrow comes, it is today. When next year comes, it is this year. When you reach the goal, there is always another goal. The future is a moving target that recedes as you approach it. And if you have conditioned yourself to believe that happiness lives in the future, you have condemned yourself to a life of perpetual postponement. Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher-emperor who ruled the Roman Empire while practicing Stoicism with unwavering dedication, understood this deeply. In his private journal, never intended for publication, he wrote to himself that very little is needed to make a happy life. It is all within yourself, in your way of thinking. Consider the revolutionary nature of this statement coming from the most powerful man in the world. He had access to every pleasure, every luxury, every form of external gratification that existed in his time, and yet he concluded that happiness had nothing to do with any of it. Happiness was internal. Happiness was about perception, interpretation, the quality of thought itself. This was not a man who lacked the means to pursue external pleasures. This was a man who had tried everything external and discovered it. The modern self-help industry has created an entire vocabulary around the pursuit of happiness: vision boards, manifestation, goal setting, life hacks, productivity optimization. All of these tools assume the same fundamental premise, that you need something you do not currently have, and that obtaining it will make you happier. But the Stoics would challenge this premise at its root. They would ask you a question that might make you uncomfortable. What if you already have everything you need to be happy right now? What if the problem is not the absence of something external, but the presence of something internal, namely, the belief that happiness must be earned rather than recognized? Epictetus, the former slave who became one of the most influential philosophers in history, taught that people are not disturbed by things, but by the views they take of things. This single insight, properly understood and applied, is enough to transform your entire relationship with happiness. It means that the chase itself, the frantic pursuit of conditions you believe are necessary for your well-being, is based on a misperception. You have been assigning happiness to external objects and circumstances, when in reality, happiness is generated by the judgments your mind makes about those objects and circumstances. Change the judgments, and you change everything. But here is the challenge. Changing judgments is internal work. It cannot be purchased. It cannot be outsourced. It cannot be achieved by acquiring more stuff or reaching more milestones. It requires you to turn inward, to examine the stories you tell yourself, and to question beliefs you have held so long you forgot they were beliefs at all. The ancient Greeks had a word that has been tragically mistranslated throughout history. The word is eudaimonia, and it is often rendered as happiness. But this translation misses something essential. Eudaimonia does not mean the pleasant emotional state we typically associate with happiness. that fleeting feeling of excitement or pleasure. It means something closer to flourishing, to living in accordance with your highest nature, to fulfilling the purpose for which you were designed. The Stoics understood that eudaimonia was not an emotion to be chased, but a condition to be cultivated. It was not something that happened to you, but something you created through the consistent practice of virtue, wisdom, and alignment with reality as it is, rather than as you wish it to be. This distinction changes everything. When you chase happiness in the modern sense, you are chasing a feeling. And feelings, by their very nature, are temporary. They arise, they peak, they fade. The pleasure of a new purchase lasts days, sometimes hours. The excitement of an achievement gives way to the anxiety of maintaining it. The initial rush of a new relationship settles into the ordinary rhythms of daily life. If happiness is defined as a feeling, then it is inherently unstable, inherently temporary, inherently unreliable. But if happiness is understood as flourishing, as living well regardless of circumstances, then it becomes something stable, something you can build, something that does not depend on the endless acquisition of new pleasures. Ryan Holiday, one of the most prominent modern interpreters of Stoic philosophy, writes about the discipline of perception. He argues that everything in life is a matter of interpretation, that between every stimulus and response there is a space where we choose what things mean. The Stoics trained themselves to use this space wisely. They did not react automatically to events based on conditioned patterns. They paused, they examined, they asked, is this really bad? Or have I simply labeled it bad? Is this truly necessary for my happiness? Or have I been conditioned to believe it is necessary? This discipline of perception is the alternative to chasing happiness. Instead of running toward conditions you believe will make you happy, you examine why you believe those conditions are necessary in the first place. Often, you discover that the beliefs themselves are the problem, not the absence of the conditions. Consider the psychology of adaptation, which modern researchers call the hedonic treadmill. Studies consistently show that when people achieve goals they believed would make them happy, their happiness spikes briefly and then returns to baseline. Lottery winners are not significantly happier than the average person 1 year after their windfall. People who achieve major career milestones experience a temporary boost, followed by a return to their previous emotional set point. The new car brings joy for a few weeks, then becomes just another vehicle. The bigger house impresses for a season, then becomes merely the place where you live. This pattern repeats endlessly, and yet most people never question the fundamental assumption driving their behavior. They simply conclude that they have not yet achieved enough, that they need to chase something bigger, something more impressive, something that will finally break the pattern. But the pattern cannot be broken through more chasing. The pattern can only be broken by stepping off the treadmill entirely. Mark Manson, in his characteristically direct style, argues that the desire for more positive experience is itself a negative experience, and that the acceptance of negative experience is itself a positive experience. This paradox captures something essential about the pursuit of happiness. The very act of wanting happiness implies that you do not have it. The very act of chasing it affirms the belief that you are currently incomplete, and this sense of incompleteness, of lack, of deficiency, is itself a form of suffering. The Stoics would recognize this pattern immediately. They would see that the chase creates the very problem it claims to solve. By teaching you that happiness is somewhere else, the chase ensures that you never experience it where you actually are, here, now, in this moment. James Clear, author of Atomic Habits, speaks about identity-based change. He argues that lasting transformation comes not from focusing on goals, but from focusing on who you wish to become. This insight aligns perfectly with the Stoic approach to happiness. Instead of asking what do I need to acquire to be happy, the Stoics ask what kind of person do I need to become. Instead of chasing external conditions, they cultivated internal qualities: wisdom, courage, justice, temperance. These virtues were not means to happiness. They were happiness. The practice of wisdom was itself satisfying. The exercise of courage was itself fulfilling. The pursuit of justice brought its own reward. Happiness was not a prize, waiting at the finish line. Happiness was woven into every step of the journey itself. Seneca observed that it is not the man who has too little that is poor, but the one who hankers after more. Notice the precision of this insight. Poverty, in the deepest sense, is not about resources. It is about desire. It is about the constant craving for what you do not have, the perpetual dissatisfaction with what you do have. A person with modest means who is content with those means is richer than a billionaire who constantly wants more. The billionaire is in a state of perpetual lack, perpetual deficiency, perpetual poverty of spirit, and no amount of accumulation can fill a void that is created by the very act of accumulating. This is the trap of chasing happiness. The more you chase, the more you reinforce the belief that you lack, and the more you believe you lack, the more you suffer, regardless of how much you actually possess. Now that we understand why chasing happiness fails, let us explore what to do instead. The Stoics did not leave us with mere critique. They provided a comprehensive alternative, a practical philosophy for daily living that has been tested across cultures and centuries. This alternative does not promise happiness as an emotional high. It offers something more reliable: tranquility, equanimity, the ability to remain stable regardless of what life throws at you. And paradoxically, this stability often produces more genuine contentment than any amount of chasing ever could. The first practice is called negative visualization, or what the Stoics termed premeditation. Each day, take a few minutes to imagine losing the things you value most: your health, your loved ones, your possessions, your reputation. This might sound depressing, but the effect is exactly the opposite. By contemplating loss, you accomplish two things simultaneously. First, you reduce the shock of actual loss when it eventually occurs, because all things are temporary and will be taken eventually. Second, and more importantly, you cultivate profound gratitude for what you currently have. The things you take for granted, the ordinary blessings you no longer notice, suddenly become vivid and precious. Your morning coffee becomes a gift. Your health becomes a miracle. The presence of people you love becomes sacred. This single practice can transform your baseline happiness more effectively than any achievement or acquisition ever could. The second practice involves the dichotomy of control, perhaps the most famous concept in Stoic philosophy. Epictetus taught that some things are within our power and some things are not, and that all of our suffering comes from confusing these categories. What is within your power? Your judgments, your desires, your aversions, your opinions, your intentions, your responses. What is outside your power? Your reputation, other people's behavior, external events, the past, even your own body to a large extent. The practice is to focus all your energy on what you control and to release attachment to what you do not. When you stop chasing happiness in external things, you are essentially applying the dichotomy of control. You are recognizing that happiness, as an internal state, cannot depend on externals you do not control. It must depend on internals you do control: your thoughts, your interpretations, your chosen responses to whatever life presents. If these insights are resonating with something deep within you, take a moment to subscribe to Stoic Valor. This is not just a channel, it is a community of souls committed to living with wisdom. Subscribe, and let us continue this journey of transformation together. The third practice is the evening review, a cornerstone of Stoic training. Before sleep, examine your day. Ask yourself 3 questions. What did I do well? Where did I fall short? What can I improve tomorrow? Seneca performed this practice religiously, writing that when the light has been removed and his wife has fallen silent, he scrutinizes his entire day and measures his deeds and words. This is not about self-criticism or guilt. It is about honest self-assessment. By reviewing your patterns, you begin to notice where you unnecessarily chase external validation, where you place your happiness in conditions outside your control, where you react rather than respond. This awareness, cultivated night after night, gradually rewires your relationship with happiness itself. The fourth practice is voluntary discomfort. This means deliberately exposing yourself to mild hardship on a regular basis. Cold showers, fasting, sleeping on a hard surface occasionally, walking in uncomfortable weather. The purpose is not masochism. The purpose is training. When you voluntarily experience discomfort, you prove to yourself that your happiness does not depend on constant comfort. You break the association between pleasant conditions and well-being. You build resilience and adaptability, and you develop gratitude for ordinary comforts that you previously took for granted. The person who has fasted appreciates food more deeply. The person who has endured cold appreciates warmth more fully. The person who has slept on the floor appreciates their bed as a luxury rather than a necessity. The fifth practice involves presence, what the Stoics called living according to nature. This means being fully where you are, doing what you are doing, without the mental chatter that pulls you into past regrets or future anxieties. Marcus Aurelius wrote that we should never let the future disturb us, for we will meet it with the same weapons of reason we use to face the present. Chasing happiness is fundamentally a future-oriented activity. It assumes that the present is insufficient and that something better awaits ahead. The alternative is to inhabit the present so completely that the question of happiness becomes irrelevant. When you are fully engaged with this moment, you are not asking whether you are happy, you are simply living. And in that total engagement, a quiet contentment naturally arises. Let me share a story that illustrates these principles. Imagine 2 people facing the same situation: an unexpected job loss. The first person, conditioned by the chase mentality, experiences the loss as a catastrophe. Their happiness depended on the job. Without it, they feel worthless, anxious, desperate. They immediately begin chasing a new job, anything to restore the external condition they believe is necessary for their well-being. The second person, trained in Stoic principles, responds differently. They recognize that the job was never fully within their control. They acknowledge the difficulty but do not. They use the transition as an opportunity to reassess their values and direction. They maintain their equanimity because their sense of self was never dependent on the position. Both people face the same external circumstance, but one suffers tremendously while the other navigates with grace. The difference is entirely internal. We have journeyed through the illusion of chasing happiness and explored the Stoic alternative. Now, as we approach the conclusion, I want to leave you with something that goes beyond technique, something that touches the very core of what it means to live a meaningful human life. Because ultimately, the question of happiness is inseparable from the question of meaning. And the Stoics understood that meaning was not found by chasing pleasant emotions, but by living in alignment with something larger than yourself. The deepest form of happiness, the kind that does not depend on circumstances, arises when you are connected to purpose. Not a goal that can be achieved and checked off a list, but an ongoing orientation, a way of being in the world that expresses your deepest values. For the Stoics, this meant living according to virtue, wisdom, courage, justice, and temperance. These were not arbitrary rules imposed from outside. They were expressions of human nature at its best. When you act wisely, you feel the satisfaction of clarity. When you act courageously, you feel the dignity of integrity. When you act justly, you feel the peace of right relationship. When you act temperately, you feel the freedom of self-mastery. These feelings are not the chase's elusive high. They are the steady warmth of a fire that does not burn out. Marcus Aurelius wrote that waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be, but simply be one. This is the ultimate alternative to chasing happiness. Stop analyzing. Stop planning. Stop waiting for conditions to be right. Start embodying the qualities you respect. Start making choices that align with your values. Start treating each moment as an opportunity to practice virtue. When you do this, something remarkable happens. The question of happiness gradually loses its urgency. You stop measuring your days by emotional peaks and valleys. You start measuring them by whether you showed up as the person you wish to be. And in that shift of measurement, a profound peace settles in. The Stoics were not opposed to pleasure. They simply recognized its limitations. Pleasure is wonderful when it arises naturally, but it makes a terrible master. When you organize your entire life around the pursuit of pleasure, you become a slave to conditions you cannot control. The weather must be right. The people around you must behave properly. Your body must feel good. Your plans must succeed. Every deviation from these conditions becomes a source of suffering. But when you organize your life around virtue, you become free. Virtue is always available. You can be wise in any circumstance. You can be courageous in any situation. You can be just regardless of how others behave. You can be temperate no matter what temptations arise. This freedom is the deepest form of happiness because it cannot be taken from you. I want you to conduct an experiment for the next 7 days. Stop chasing. Stop the internal narrative that says I will be happy when. Instead, each morning, ask yourself a different question. How can I live well today, regardless of what happens? This simple shift in orientation can transform your experience of the week. You will likely discover that many moments of genuine contentment arise when you stop demanding that reality conform to your preferences. You will find satisfaction in small things you previously overlooked. You will feel a strange peace in difficulties that would have previously disturbed you. This is not because you have acquired anything new. It is because you have stopped blocking what was always available. Robin Sharma writes about the importance of beginning each day as a hero, not a victim. This resonates deeply with Stoic philosophy. The victim mentality says that happiness depends on external conditions aligning in your favor. The hero mentality says that your response to conditions is what matters, and your response is always within your power. When you stop chasing happiness and start practicing virtue, you step out of victim. You reclaim your agency. You recognize that while you cannot control what happens to you, you can absolutely control what you do with what happens. And in that control lies a freedom that no external achievement can provide. As we conclude, I want to leave you with a question that has the power to redirect your entire life. The question is this: what if you stopped treating happiness as something to be obtained and started treating it as something to be expressed? What if happiness is not an acquisition, but a capacity, not something you find, but something you bring? The Stoics suggest that the happy life is not waiting for you somewhere in the future. It is available right now, in this moment, if you choose to perceive it. The practice of gratitude, the discipline of presence, the commitment to virtue, the release of what you cannot control, these are not techniques for eventually becoming happy. These are expressions of happiness itself. Do them, and you are already living well. Regardless of whether you feel the emotional high, you have been conditioned to associate with happiness. If this message has touched something true within you, subscribe to Stoic Valor and share this video with someone who needs to hear it. We are building a community of people who refuse to chase shadows, who refuse to postpone living well, who choose each day to practice the philosophy that has transformed lives for over 2,000 years. The path is not easy. It requires you to release beliefs you have held your entire life. But on the other side of that release is a freedom you cannot imagine until you experience it. Stop chasing, start living. The happiness you have been seeking has been here all along, hidden in the very place you forgot to look. This moment, exactly as it is, exactly as you are. Go forward now with wisdom. Go forward with the understanding that you need nothing more than what you already have to begin living well. The chase is over, the practice begins. And in that practice, may you discover the peace that no external circumstance can give or take away.